Hello everybody, I am going to try and weather this X-Wing. I picked it up at a charity shop a few weeks ago, and it's a nice little sort of like, it's a kid's model. As you can see, it's not bad. It's little wings pivot like this, and it's a nice shape. Undercarriage retracts. I don't know how old it is, 20 odd years old, but I thought would it be nice to sort of try and weather it up a little bit and see if we can make it look a little bit more accurate as for the films. So what I've done is I've cleaned the model off. Who knows where it's been? I've cleaned the model off and I got all the dirt off. And what I'm going to do is to use some Flory Washes, which is recommended by a good friend of mine who's very much into this sort of stuff. Here it is, Flory Washes, which are a clay-based, well, so you can call it a paint really. You sort of coat the surface in this sort of clay-based material. So what I've got here, I've got a, as you can see, dark dirt, black, and rust colour, and hopefully it gives you a combination of them to make this Red 3 look a little bit more realistic. So let's give it a go and see how it goes. Right, I have to emphasise that I am no modeller. I do not have lots of experience doing this. I did this once about a year ago, well, a couple of years ago, for my nephew with a much bigger X-Wing. So this is largely going to be a bit of trial and error, but if I can do it, you can do it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and add some texture into these ring panels. And the best thing about these sort of washes is that you don't have to be perfectly accurate, because you can wipe them off. Because they're clay based, you can actually wipe off the residue that you don't like afterwards. So let's give that a go in there. I know it looks pretty rough at the moment, but hopefully later on it will all become a bit clearer. Now, at the moment I'm using dirt, but I think that's probably not enough. I really probably should be using black. Oops, perhaps if I actually put it in the centre of the screen would help, wouldn't it? Let's try black instead. That's better. Yeah, I know I've gone over the edges, but that's perfectly alright. That's, and of course in here as well. Let's get that in there. I think you can see there, that's already bringing up things like panel lines in detail. There we are, you see. Bringing out all the lines that you couldn't normally see but have been nicely moulded. Here we are. There we go. Right, if I leave that for a couple of minutes. It does help actually put it in the middle of the camera, doesn't it? So I'm too busy looking at it, not looking at the screen. There we are. Okay. That'll do for a start. Now you can already see how the lines are coming through. Okay, let's pause that for a moment. Okay, now show what we can do. We get a bit of tissue, we can wipe that. We can wipe that. And if we do that, it takes off any surface and it makes the panel line stand out. Look at that. Much better. Now I'm not going to have you sit through me do all these wings and bits and pieces, but let's try the top bit. Let's try a wing up here. Okay, let's give this wing a go up there. Right, let's give that. Right, let's see what we can do. So this is just plain black. Plain black wash. Now I know it's a bit heavy. As you'll see in a moment or two, we can do something about that. What I do need to keep the heavy bits though are in the inlets, a bit like sort of jet engines. And I don't know what a jet engine would do in space, like absolutely nothing, because those bits are going to remain dirty. It doesn't look right if they're clean. So let's just put some darkness in there. And can you see there where all the panel lines are now coming up? All right, you're now thinking, you're probably thinking, oh god, that's absolutely filthy, that's no good, is it? And you're right. So get a bit of tissue. Let's leave that for a moment just to dry. Okay. While the wing's drying, I'll do another section here. There's a lot of detail on this bit behind the R2 unit. Yeah, you see, I'm a nerd. I know what an R2 unit is. I've been watching these films since 1977. I was very, very young. Okay, let's do that bit there. Right, and also I'm going to put some dirt here along the front of the engines, because you'd expect that bit to get dirty, and of course here at the back as well. Right, you're thinking, so what? Look at that, he's made a complete mess of that. Yeah, probably. Nonetheless, now it's dried off a bit, so let's get a bit of tissue. Now I can rub. Gently rub off the excess, like that. Now as you can see, that wing looks so much better than it did a few minutes ago when it was just plain plastic. You see? Look at the comparison. Look at that, you see? So all we have to do is do that across the entire model. I'm not going to make you sit through that. So we'll come back a little bit later and see how we get on. Well, as you can see, I've now done the upper wing surfaces. Look at the difference. Look at the difference. Okay, it's not going to be a perfect model, but it doesn't matter. So now I've done the upper bit. Now I'll leave that while the upper bit is drying a little bit. I will wipe a little bit off in places. I'm going to go and do the nose. Let's move that over there a bit. Let's do the nose. Let's see how this comes out. So again, what I'm doing at the moment, I'm using mainly black, a little bit of dirt, as it's called, and then later on I will put a bit of rust on in places. So let's see what we can do with the nose and the cockpit. Each of these X-Wings are slightly different, you know, although, I mean, as we all well know, Luke had Red 5. And I think, and I'm sure some aficionado will correct me, but I think Red 3, which I got here, was Biggs, Luke's old friend who was killed over the Death Star. Yeah, I know these things. So, all right, that's just a quick run over the nose. As you can see, this wash is really getting into the panel lines there. Look at that, really getting in. Okay, it's bubbling up in places. Doesn't matter. Let's do the other side. There we are. and the nose as well. Well, let's do that bit as well while I'm there. Let's do the nose. That's always fairly clean. That's what I see with Star Wars spacecraft. Generally, all the Rebel stuff is always very dirty. Imperial stuff is nice and clean because it's straight off the line. The Rebels, you get the impression they sort of had what they could obtain. It's not always in the best condition, always be endlessly sort of field repaired. That's what I quite like about this stuff. Star Trek, on the other hand, I mean, all the Federation stuff particularly are always spanking brand new, and they're always very clean looking. It's a completely different sort of design aesthetic to Star Wars. But there you go. Let's just put a little bit more black in that bit over there. Now, I will, once I've done that, I'll leave it to dry for a few minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll see if we can improve that a lot so it doesn't look like it's just been out of a colliery. Okay. Right. Here we are, as we've seen it. Now it's slightly dried. So what we're going to do is I'm going to try and clean off some of the excess to make it really show up. Now, if I just rub this lightly. There. You can use a little bit of water if you want to. Like that. Trick, if I ever do this in future, I'm going to have to try to remember to actually hold it in front of the camera because I'm so busy staring at the model. I'm not really looking so much at the screen, so it's off to the side, and I apologise for that. Hey, look, it's getting there, isn't it? I think it is anyway. So this needs to be darkened up more, which won't be a problem. Along here, let's get some of the excess off. Let's lighten up the tip of the nose as well. Rub that bit a bit harder. There you are, look at that. It's looking less like a toy now, isn't it? No, they all say at home. What are you doing? Okay, well, I'll leave it there for the time being. I'll do some more on it, because I told you sit through the entire thing, because no one will be watching it, and, well, don't want to watch it anyway. Okay, right, be back later. I'll do a bit more. Okay, as you can see, I've now done pretty much all the upper surfaces. And all I've got to do now is do the undersurface, so let's give that a go as well. Okay, so let's just put that there so you actually see what I'm doing. There are these unfortunate holes in here, as you can see, where it's not a scale model, it's a toy anyway. So that shouldn't really be there. But I suppose I could, if I really wanted to, I could fill them up with putty or something. But I doubt if I'll get around to it, to be honest. But okay, let's give this a go as well. So yes, I know what you're all thinking. It's far too dirty. And you're right, but it won't be later. Now these bits, because they're like intakes, because obviously there are intakes in space, obviously, but hey, Star Wars logic, don't ask. It looks good. Are dirtier than the rest. If you look at still images, you can see exactly what I mean. Let's stick some in there as well. Okay, so right, a little bit more on the fuselage. La la la. The things you do on your day off. There you go. And so far I'm using almost all black. Later on I'll put some other colours, a little bit of rust here and there, a little bit later on, but not just yet, because I want to get this basic pattern done. I'll come back to it later on. Right, there we are. Poor old Biggs, he had lots of his lines cut, didn't he? He had quite a long scene towards the end on Tatooine where he's discussing joining the rebellion with Luke. For some reason, maybe it slowed the pace down, I'm not sure why, it was all cut out. And so, in the film, when he encounters Biggs towards the end, it's the first time you watch it, you think, oh, he's an old friend, but who is this bloke? Where if the film had been completed as had actually been intended and shot, he would have been introduced much earlier in the film, and these scenes would have made more sense, really. But there you go. What do I know? What do I know? I'm just a lowly punter. Okay, yep, there we are. Absolutely dirty and filthy, but that's fine, as I keep saying. A little bit more on there. Torpedo tubes. No, they're not photon torpedoes. That's Star Trek. These are proton torpedoes, which are obviously completely different and can strangely turn 90 degrees depending if the script requires it. There we are. Look, that's absolutely filthy looking now. That's cool. We like that. A bit more on there. A little bit more on there. Okay, and of course the landing skid. I almost forgot about that, didn't I? Well, it makes a change from the pub. Right, there you go. Absolutely filthy, and I'll leave it to be. I'll leave it to dry and come back a bit later on, then we'll start tidying it up a bit. Okay, it's been about 20 minutes or so, so let's have a look. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to start cleaning some of the excess off, so make it not look like it's just kind of a scrap heap. Now we can use water, so glass of water. You can use cocktail sticks. I don't want to do this too heavily. I don't take off everything I've put on, but I just want to make it just a little bit. Oops. If I don't drop it on the floor. And look at that. You see, look how the surface is coming off, but still remaining a bit darker. But all the panel lines are being accentuated. So a little bit more of that. Oops. Remember to look at the screen, Philip, just because you haven't done this before. Now I carefully leave those darker bits in there because if you look at the studio model, they were darker, as is that panel line there. I think I'll leave the engines largely as they are because they were darker. There's a little bit of water there. There we are. When it's all done, I will spray it with some sort of fixative, because otherwise it will just, clay will just keep coming off every time I pick it up. Not to do such a thing. I mean, who swirls these things around their head and goes meow when they're in their mid-50s? I've absolutely no idea. Hello. Okay, look, there we are. Back up there again. While the camera was off, I had a quick look at the actual model of Red 3. Surprisingly, it's not quite as dirty as some of the others. Obviously, Biggs had some sort of newer model, or perhaps he took it to the car wash. Yeah, let's close the wings up. Do, 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 do. Now the underside as well, as we did a bit earlier on. Scrub that wing. It's all coming off from my tissue. Said you can also use one of those little cocktail sticks with the, what they call the buds, aren't they? The little, if you want to get into those little nooks and crannies. Let's get a new tissue. Hang on. I used to make kits when I was a teenager, as a kid, all those hundreds of years ago, but I don't really have the patience to do anything like that anymore. Time as well, but nonetheless, doing little things like this are quite amusing. They're quite sort of satisfying in a funny sort of way. Is anybody still watching this? No. There's a bit too much dirt on here. Let's get a little bit more off, I think. Well, I think you get the idea. I think what I'm going to do with it now is I'll put a little bit of rust on it here and there and do a little bit more cleaning, and then I'll like to show you the end result. Okay, bye-bye for now. Okay, and there we go. I think that will probably do. I'm happy with that. Okay, it's not a perfect model, as I said. It's just a kid's toy, but it's made it look a little bit better, hasn't it? I think it has anyway. So, yeah, all it is just clay washes. And carefully wiped on and painted on and then wiped off strategically. So, yeah, I mean, I'll probably give it to my nephew, I think, really. I think he'll like that. After I've swore it around my head a few times and gone, zoom, no Lord Vader, and stuff like that. Thanks for watching. I would say click like and subscribe, but you've heard it so many times, and quite honestly, I don't have a channel anyway. So, bye-bye.